Funky Politics.
Funky Politics Show.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics.
Funky Politics. Powered by MLGW. Memphis Light, Gas, and Water.
Keeping it real, right, and funky. Funky Politics. Politics.
Get the funk out my face. Get the funk out my face. Get the funk out my face. Get the funk out my face.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. I am DC, sitting here along with my great co-host, Doc Ward. Doctor.
Man, it's been a couple weeks since I seen you last, man.
I know,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed you, but I had to go down to the Queen's funeral. Just got back.
Lord help us. Lord, I will leave that alone.
What?
You were not in Detroit.
I was in Detroit. I was at the funeral for the whole 52 hours, man.
Lord Jesus.
Whole 52, man.
I watched it.
You know, I was there. I bought a hot dog in between, got a Coke, got a souvenir T-shirt.
I can't do this with you today.
Got a souvenir T-shirt.
Can't do this with you.
The box collection CD. I got it all, man.
Of the entire service?
I got it all. I got a glimpse of even watching Ariana Grande and all of the pastors behind, just kind of trying to look.
And the president.
You know,
bless his heart.
Trying bless his, really bless his heart.
Bless his heart.
Which president you?
It almost killed it. But
Yeah,
anyway,
that's what I'm saying.
let me tell you something.
But then you had another funeral for Senator McCain,
Yeah.
and then the president's not invited.
Well, it's like that. He's not invited to a whole lot of things. I didn't invite him to my barbecue last week either.
Oh, he didn't?
I mean, no.
Yeah, because he used to bring the malt liquor.
He brought all the Coke 45.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But he's not doing it anymore. But let's get to something real quick. I want to talk real quick about our show today.
Yep.
We have a barn burner. Where else in the entire country will you have a Wendi Thomas and an Eric Barnes other than on Funky Politics? Other than Funky Politics, there's nowhere in America.
Nowhere. Nobody's going to touch that.
Maybe in
Nobody's going to touch it.
I mean Guatemala, because I think they were going to go travel again. But
it was only Guatemala could sanction it. Is that what it is?
Pretty much.
Okay. Well, Kazukian sanctions this one, and we're going to unpack the Daily Memphian, a new publication in the Memphis area. Is it real, right, and funky, or what?
Or is it just funky? Right here,
right now,
on the Kazuki Network, you got Funky Politics, folks.
We're getting funky, y'all.
33% of Americans have a college degree. 43% of Africans in this country have a college degree. These are African immigrants that are coming into this country. They didn't have the opportunity and access, but they came over here in this American dream and created within this framework the opportunity that this country was set up, the ideal it was set on. And now to say that these people, because the disparaging remark goes further than just hole.
It's Funky Politics on the Kazukian Network.
Kazukian! Politics is what we do. We just make it funky.
Powered by MLG&W. Memphis Light, Gas, and Water.
MLGW.
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the Kazukian Network.
Do you remember when we fell in love? We were young and innocent then. Do you remember how it all began?
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. I am DC, sitting here this evening with, I tell you, we've got a gaggle of folks here, right? But first of all, Doc Ward, my co-host. Doc, what's up?
Man, we're funky as a pack of goats, some old overcoats, and the stuff that floats. You know,
I'm gonna let that go.
Man.
I'm gonna let that go.
Hey man, it's funky up in here.
It is funky up in here.
Funky
hot too. It is hot and funky.
Yeah.
Anyway, our guest hosts today are the one and only, the one and the only, right? Guess who we got, Doc? Guess who we got? Who's this young lady right here sitting with us? And she's been here before.
No, say 2 words. I got my eyes closed.
What's her name?
Say 2 words. Don't say 2 words.
Put respect on her name.
No, not you. I want to hear her now. No.
Wendi
you want to hear me say
Thomas.
Yeah, I heard it. That sounds like the Phenomenal Woman.
The Phenomenal Woman.
Yeah.
The 2018 Phenomenal
She
Woman.
just keeps coming back like moth to a flame.
I like y'all.
She loved
That's
the
why I
funk.
come back.
How you know it?
Stink to my
Love
thing.
the funk, man.
Stick to my. But anyway,
there you go.
And you know what? Wendi, thanks a lot sitting in with us, guest hosting with us. And today, as our special guest here on Funky Politics, the funkiest show in America, we have the one and only Eric Barnes, president and executive editor of what? The Daily Memphian.
Daily
right?
Memphian.
That's right.
A very new piece we've got here in Memphis. And welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, welcome back, as a matter of fact. You've been here before with us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm glad to be on less sad circumstances.
There you go. There you go.
That's right. The last time was Burnell. That's right.
Burnell had passed.
Appreciate you coming in for that. Well, let's jump right into it. We want to talk about the Daily Memphian and the come-upness of this paper, and where did it come from?
We know it's new.
Yeah.
Right.
But is it funky? Is it funky?
We're going to try. We'll try.
You
It
gonna
will not
try?
be as funky as this show.
Well,
but we're going to try.
And
We're
this
gonna
show's
do what
pretty
we
damn
can.
funky.
I
I want you to
know.
know
I mean,
that.
I don't say that.
We're not expecting any miracles. We just
Right.
want news. So
Right.
there
Yeah.
you go.
Right.
But talk to us about it.
Well,
How'd you get
I mean, it came out of. There's no other way to say it. I mean, it came out of Gannett. Primarily Gannett's ownership of the Commercial Appeal, and Gannett, once they bought the Commercial Appeal, began to make changes that really were to the detriment of local news and to the civic discourse and just the community discourse in Memphis.
Talk to us about it a little bit more. Unpack it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
because Gannett is USA Today. So
Gannett is
everybody
USA
understands.
Today.
That's the publication that everyone's familiar with.
Absolutely. And so they had already owned the Nashville paper. They bought the Scripps Howard paper, and they've now got Knoxville, Nashville, Jackson, Memphis, and a bunch of community papers.
So all
around.
of Tennessee, we're served now by Gannett.
Except Chattanooga has an independent paper and has since its founding, basically.
Okay.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
One source, so to speak. Well, one
for the entire 850-mile state or whatever it is. Crossing cultures, crossing values, cross urban, rural, everything. It's just it's interesting.
Tell us a little bit about you, Eric, and how you got to this space right now. This isn't your first rodeo, so to speak, with an upstart, right?
Right, kind of. Yeah, I mean, I've been at the Daily News, Memphis Daily News, for almost 16 years, and was hired there. It was really a kind of public information, public records paper at the time, and it's been family owned for 150 years. And his vision was that we would become more meaningful editorially, and then we were able to get to a point of having at least some significance as a niche business politics paper covering some community issues. But we were kind of stuck. We were stuck at a newsroom of 6 or 7. Yeah. I think we'd made a mark, but we were not in a place where we could get bigger, particularly as all these opportunities presented themselves with Gannett downsizing and the local paper.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. Doc, I know it looks like you got those eyes just over there, just spinning there. What you got going on?
Yeah, I'm still back on that thing about one paper covering the entire state, and how now you're breaking off and establishing this independent paper. Yeah. So this is going to be competition with what Gannett's putting out.
Absolutely.
Right? And you're going to go full fresh on with them.
Yes.
Now, I appreciate that, but I also know that's a big operation. So how do you all plan to do that locally? I mean, how are you constructed to be able to get the distribution, the news, and everything else in a manner out that's going to be in competition with what Gannett's doing?
We are going to be, locally focused, a newsroom in 20 plus people at launch, and then growing, we think, from there. And we will be, the simple difference is that we'll be focused entirely on Memphis. Gannett and the Commercial Appeal does a lot of national news. They do a lot of news from Knoxville. They share content across their papers. There's a lot of USA Today content in there. I mean, it works for them, and obviously it works for some subscribers. But we feel like if we have reporters focusing exclusively on Memphis, then that is just a huge competitive advantage. The exception being we will have a full-time reporter at the legislature in Nashville, trying to view the legislature through the eyes of Memphis. And as we all know, from Confederate statues to consolidation to a lot of really small, overlooked issues that have big impact, the legislature has a lot of influence over Memphis. And as Governor Haslam said a few years ago, the legislature can be extremely anti-city. And so we'll try to report on that. But otherwise, we're covering anything and everything in Memphis, and we can talk maybe more about that. That's our competitive advantage.
Yeah. But from a support perspective, though, I mean, like I said, you got to match these guys. So are you all coming out just heavily capitalized? Are you looking to build from subscribers? I mean, but how are you for-profit, nonprofit? How does that work?
Yes and yes. So we are nonprofit, although we're going to run it as a business, and our goal is to become sustainable. There are a lot of different kinds of nonprofits. I mean, Overton Park Conservancy that I'm involved with. It's a free and open park. It really can't raise money, so it's constantly getting donations. But then you look at a Methodist Healthcare. It's probably one of the best run, most successful businesses, quote unquote, in Memphis, but it's a nonprofit too. There are a lot of different kinds of nonprofits.
And that's how you all are operating.
That's how. So we'll have a paywall. We'll sell sponsorships. We'll do events, and it is our goal to be self-sufficient by year 4 or 5.
So for those who aren't familiar with what a paywall is, can you say what that is?
Yeah, and I should clarify, the Daily Memphian will be online only. There's no print component because people have asked
there
no
you
print
go.
edition. Yeah, I should have said that earlier.
Yeah.
The paywall is subscribers, so it'll be $7 a month to get access to all the articles. You can get 5 articles a month free, but then you got to pay.
Okay.
So guys I'm sorry, go ahead, Wendi. Go ahead.
So I'm in this nonprofit news startup world as well. Founded MLK 50 Justice Through Journalism over a year ago, and we're happy to have just gotten funded for our second year.
Yeah.
And so when I heard that y'all were going to have a hard paywall, the 5 articles is half of what I think the New York Times gives away for free, I was curious as how you decided that, because I don't know of a single other nonprofit news organization that's focused locally that has a paywall. So who did you model that after?
There are ones that have memberships. Not very many have
right.
paywalls.
So there's a difference between a paywall and a membership. A membership, people subscribe, but there's not a paywall. So if I'm not
Texas Tribune I believe has a paywall.
You want to put some money on that?
I could be. No, I don't. Let me. We didn't model it after anyone.
Okay, so this was a unique thing. So when you've talked publicly about consulting with other nonprofit news organizations, can you share who some of those organizations were?
Sure. We talked to the Institute for Nonprofit News and some of their members. Now, when I say we, Andy Cates, who's our board chair and really the co-founder of this, my partner in it, he actually did most of those conversations. We talked to the people who started, some of the key people at Mississippi Today, which was started a couple years ago. We talked to for-profit. We talked to folks at the Washington Post. We talked to Graham Holdings, which is the Washington Post family, and they continue to own TV stations, and they have a big digital back end. So that was extremely helpful. Billy Penn, which is actually for-profit still kind of a startup in Philadelphia.
Right? Mm-hmm.
And then, whatever sort of web research and so on that we did. And we found that there wasn't a clean model for what we wanted. There was not a comparison for what we were doing.
So we're exploring new territory there.
We are, in a way, and I am totally ready to be corrected on this, but I have not found a nonprofit online news startup is sort of trying to do the scope of coverage we're doing. They tend to be, Texas Tribune is the one that people point to as probably the big success story. Right. And they are very much a legislative outlet. They cover a lot of statewide politics. MinPost is a longtime one that's been successful. I think they've got a pretty small newsroom, though. They're up in Minneapolis.
Right.
We're one of the first to say, look, we want to be, we're going to cover everything in the city of Memphis 7 days a week.
So you're blazing the trail not just in terms of having something that's going to challenge the larger dailies, but you're also blazing the trail from the nonprofit sense that you're going to be bringing, and I say competitive news for lack of a
I think it is competitive.
Term.
I think
something that's
fine.
competitive out there, not just the court record, not just the the houses that are for sale or the other things that are considered just the public information. You're actually going after stories.
Absolutely.
That
we'll have
every other publication is going to.
We'll go ahead.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. Please go with your hand.
Yeah. The quick way I say it is that we're going to cover everything except last night's crime. So you've got 4 TV stations and the Commercial Appeal doing crime blotter coverage, which which is basically just a parade of mugshots and 3 sentences in each, and just really, we can go on this my rant about how problematic that coverage is. We're not doing that.
No.
Otherwise, we are covering criminal justice. Yolanda Jones will be covering, the penal farm, the Blue Crush, the police department, the sheriff's office, big picture work, talking to Just City folks, talking to Bill Gibbons, talking to people about crime strategies and crime trends. And we're not going to shy away from the bad side of things, but we don't need to focus.
That's what
Otherwise,
I
we're going to cover everything.
I wanted to ask you about, you said the crime blotter, and I understand that of course all 4 stations, they run it as the top of the hour.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, if it bleeds. But now, if it's news, it's still news, all right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're not going to shy away from that part, right?
We're not going to shy away from coverage of crime. But we are going to shy away from shallow, immediate, knee-jerk coverage of last night's murder. Yeah.
Yes,
because what do we contribute? What can I do differently than if I just do a 3-sentence story about a murder last night?
That everybody else had on television.
How am I adding anything?
Right. So it seems like you're saying that you want to do something different. You're going to try to add something.
In crime coverage, we are different.
Right. Because crime news, this has been one of my complaints for a long time. Crime news is really cheap to produce.
Yeah.
There's one side, right? You get what the police tell you about what something happens. You repeat that. You may go find somebody standing on the corner who didn't see it, but will pontificate about what may have happened anyway.
But it's so sensational, though.
Right, and it's cheap and
it generates clicks.
And it generates clicks. And so I think anything, any kind of coverage that would go deeper than that would be a good thing.
Value added.
But it sounds like what Eric's doing is that he's saying, I'm going to forego the easy news that it can get me the clicks, and we're going to go into more substantive aspects of maybe the same thing.
Absolutely. On crime, absolutely. We absolutely will. Now, I'm not saying, let's be honest, I got to be sustainable. We're going to cover sports.
Well, I was getting ready to bring
we're going to cover sports. We're going to cover Penny Hardaway. It's important. People love Tigers. It also generates a lot of clicks. I mean, I am president and executive editor, so there are choices I have to make about generating clicks. I find last night crime coverage, crime border coverage, really, I mean, to be just almost immoral. I mean,
but you
I could go on
understand,
and
understand what you're doing when we talk about this.
Yeah,
you're actually you're attempting to uplift the intelligentsia of the subscriber base, because now you're making people have to think differently and get off the infrastructure of crime. If they want to buy your paper, they can't be thinking about who got stabbed last night and why and how and whatever in that quick manner. They're going to want more.
We're not going to do that.
And in an age where people are trying to get news quicker, easier.
But if it's balanced reporting, though, if it's balanced, if it's accurate and if it's fair, I mean, you don't go find. I'm not going to even throw any names out there, but you know how some of the news people, they go out and they find my little sister and she has no clue.
Your little sister's in it again.
I'm not, but you get my point. And I don't see I see the negativity already when he hits the screen, and I forgot what the story about because I'm looking at.
But it's quick. You can do it in 10 minutes.
Character.
Even if they're reporting government, it's all about what you can say. And there may be a legislative measure that's on the books that's very detailed, and people want to get to it, but they want to just say it in 10 seconds or less. Yeah. You got somebody telling you to go on.
And that's the thing on Behind the Headlines, to whatever extent Behind the Headlines is the show I do on WKNO has been successful. It's because people like to come on and talk about an issue for 26 minutes without commercial interruption. Because when we had Bob Corker on, the senator, I mean, he got to think, that was really, I got to actually talk, and that was a huge compliment. And I think, to whatever extent we can translate that into the Daily Memphian, that we can go in depth on most, not always, on most of what we do. That's important. And again, no last night crime. That stuff's just nonsense.
All right.
No print media. It's going to be strictly digital. I want to make people to understand that. Digital media.
Yep.
$7 a month.
With a paywall.
With a paywall.
Right.
So how do you think about that in terms of who can afford to access your product, right? Sure. Memphis is still the poorest large metro in the nation.
Yeah.
Right.
And you've made the choice, unlike any other nonprofit, I just checked, Texas Tribune does not have a paywall.
It does not. Okay, I'm wrong.
Right.
I was wrong.
So I talked to some national people who write about this to confirm that. So you're going to do what no other nonprofit news outlet in the country has done in the poorest metro in the nation.
Yep.
Yes.
And that makes sense to you because
we'll find ways to give access to people who can't afford it. So simple things are, having it, and this will not happen at launch. Okay, so we'll launch by end of September. I don't know when this will air, but
September 2018.
Okay, so I believe we will launch by the end of, that's the plan, by the end of September. So everything I'm about to say is not necessarily going to be there on day one, but this is what we will be adding. We'll be free at libraries. We'll be free at community centers. We'll be free to all teachers K through 12 or pre-K through 12 in Shelby County. We will then begin to work with groups who can help us get access to people who don't have access. We can do subscription programs where you can buy for other people, buy one for yourself and buy for someone who doesn't have the money for that. We can raise money against that and say we're going to have a certain number. The push pull on that is we have to be sustainable. Newspapers and news is broken. So we can say, I would much prefer to make it free. I mean, that would be great for the reasons you described and others.
Well, sure, you got a payroll to make, right?
Then we've got to raise money every single year to support it. If we don't have some means to support ourselves, then we're stuck in the place where we're going year to year, month to month, cycle to cycle, trying to raise money.
Let's go to that support piece.
As somebody who didn't have a wealthy benefactor to bankroll them to the tune of $6.5 million starting out, I get that, right? I get the tension between writing the news, reporting the news, strategizing on how to cover the news, and raising money. It's tough. It is very tough. But I think that's why most outlets don't start with 27 staffers, as y'all have chosen to do. And you're able to do that because you have this, as it's been reported, this bankroll of $6.5 million. Is that correct?
Approaching 7, yes.
Approaching 7, so that's great. I was delighted to raise about $250,000 my first year.
Wow.
I had to do most of that outside of Memphis.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because the kind of journalism that my team does.
We raised about $5 then. DC wouldn't have spent it on a payday, and that was the end of the Blue Road.
So there's challenges there, and I think it's probably why you've seen these other news outlets, even Texas Tribune, start a lot smaller.
Yes.
Because they wanted to build up that membership and be able to grow. And so you may have set yourself up for a situation where instead of being a trailblazer, where you're going to flame out pretty fast, because maybe there's a reason why other people aren't doing it the way you've chosen to do it.
It's
because
possible.
they
Look, this is a
work.
startup. I mean, it is
Right.
an absolutely entrepreneurial startup endeavor, and there's a tremendous amount of risk involved in the way that we've approached it.
So with respect to the risk, though, you have no doubt. She said you've raised nearly $7 million, and that's phenomenal for a startup. Digital news startup, and you've got 27 employees. Do you find yourself in a space where you're larger than any of the other smaller outlets like this right now?
I don't
Already?
know. I don't know. We're larger than a lot, and we are contrary to how most started. They had 2 to 4 journalists who maybe were let go or parted company with their big metro, kind of started focused on politics locally. They started focusing on the arts, and then we made the Wendy's right. We made a very conscious decision to not follow that model, that we felt we had to come out strong make a big impact, and on day one of launch, be able to cover as not, the entirety of the city. I mean, keep in mind the C8 at its peak had 250 plus employees, not even its peak.
Right.
15 years ago, they had 200 plus employees. So we
In the newsroom.
Thank
Right.
you. Yeah, in the newsroom.
Right.
Think about that. We got 25, and we're about as big as the CA is now. That's insane. But we came out.
Wow.
We made the decision to come out strong with comprehensive coverage of important issues and fun issues and so on, and then hope that we will attract subscribers quickly in mass, because we weren't a small publication. I've run a small niche publication in Memphis for 15. Well, we've been meaningful editorially for 12 years, and it maxes out in terms of who you can reach when you've only got that small newsroom.
I'm optimistic that it's such a heavily capitalized organization, juxtaposed against a community that has the literacy rate that it does and the poverty rate that it does. There's an opportunity for a lot of good synergy here. But as you see your publication, and you're looking down the road at the ultimate success, what will that look like?
Yeah.
What is the Daily Memphian going to look like then when you've reached your peak?
I think if it is the primary source for intelligent news in Memphis, and that civically engaged or people who care about the civic life of Memphis read us, the majority of them, whatever that number is, I don't know. I think that if we've reached all stripes, back to Wendy's point, and that we have found ways to reach people for whom $7 a month is not doable, but that we're reaching them in meaningful numbers. I think that if we look and feel proud about the news we do, we're doing 7 issues a week.
Right.
We're going to have some bad days. That's just the truth of it.
Right.
But if we can look in total and say, hey, we covered things well, we have a good reputation, people read us and respect us, we've broken some news and we've brought down some bad folks, we've
raised up some good folks.
Yeah. Then I think that's success. Now, one funny thing about that, when you talk to people and some of the business people, and they're like, well, how are you going to measure that data wise? I'm like, I don't know. What's the data on that? We can point to statistics and we can point to percentages, and that'll be meaningful, but it's got to feel like it's successful, and that's a very subjective thing. Back to the risk of doing that.
Real quick, one answer right here I need. Is print media dead?
No.
And we'll be right back with Eric Barnes, the president and executive editor of the Daily Memphian, right here on Funky Politics on the Kazuki Network.
DC and Doc Ward on Funky Politics. Riffin' on Jazz.
This next gentleman we're talking about has an unforgettable voice.
My sugar is so refined.
Jazz was the happiest.
Yeah,
Callaway went to my school.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's not an alum because he didn't graduate. He had some gigs to do.
Riffin' on Jazz on the Kazukian Network.
Keeping it real, right, and funky. Funky Politics.
I came to bring the pain, hardcore from the brain. Let's go inside my astral plane, find out my mental, based on instrumental records. Hey, so I can write monumental methods. I'm not the king, but this is decaf. I stick 'em for the cream. Check it, just how deep can get. Deep as the abyss, and brothers is mad fish.
We're back with you right here on Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. Of course, I'm DC, Doc Ward, and our very special guest host, the one and only Wendi Thomas.
Funk-nominal.
Do I have to always say that, funk-nominal?
That's like a brand.
She knows she's funky. Right, Wendi?
Yeah. Well,
But I feel better when he says it.
See there.
Funky Wendi. Thank you.
Yeah.
The funky, I'm sorry.
Stay off my stuff, man.
That's bad. But anyway, we're sitting here and we're having a wonderful conversation with Eric Barnes, president and executive editor of the Daily Memphian, a new newspaper here in the city of Memphis that's going to be launching here real soon. And we were having a conversation with, and I'm going to throw it to you right quick because we were talking about measuring success, right?
Yeah, I think Eric made some interesting points about. Your question was, what does success look like? How would you measure that? And Eric, you said something about, being able to attract a large audience and being seen as a reliable news source. But as a fellow news startup person, that's not always the metrics that foundations typically are used to seeing to measure success. And so we were just kind of having an exchange about, is success page views? Is success clicks? Yeah. Is success hiring a staff that looks like the city? Is success paying all those people a fair wage? Is success being able to produce content that's changing public policy? There's just so many different ways to measure success, and it's tough.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I talked about getting the bad guys and elevating the good guys. I think having an impact on public policy. We're not doing a lot of opinion, but nonetheless, if you do good, thorough, objective reporting, you highlight things that people go, hey, that's got to change. I think absolutely if having a staff that is diverse, that's absolutely a priority for us. And that's, if we're not more diverse 4 or 5 years from now, let alone a year from now, we've failed. I do think.
Why wouldn't that be a measure for failure at the start? Because you're probably never going to hire as many journalists at one time as what you just did.
At one time, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure about that, but we will be hiring more. I'm very certain, and I think we need to be paying people. First, you talked about hiring people and paying them well. I mean, you and I know from being in the print world especially, it's an underpaid profession and it's a disrespected profession financially. And so I don't know if we're trying not to go in the wrong direction on that. Back to diversity, we will do our best to that our hires will make the newsroom more and more diverse.
Well, I want to stay right there on a diverse. Go ahead on a diverse newsroom.
Yeah,
is it a diverse newsroom to you?
It'll be almost.
No. I ask, is it?
This is not enough.
Right now.
Yeah. Not diverse enough
today.
Not
if that's it.
No.
If you were to give yourself a grade on diversity,
I don't know what
would you give?
I'm not sure.
Because right now, I have to be honest, I'd probably give y'all like I'm a grading on a curve.
No, without the curve.
Probably like a D, honestly, because your staff is 80% white in a city that's 63% black. And I'm not sure how that makes sense. And I'm not sure how you justify the tagline for, by, and about Memphis when your staff doesn't look like Memphis. It might look like Germantown or maybe Collierville.
Looks like East Memphis.
Maybe
Cincinnati.
Well, but I mean, you've got the
I'm
fact.
sorry.
So let's walk back. I think these are absolutely fair points that we should be held accountable on.
Sure.
But I think that the industry is screwed up. Okay, the industry, the
industry is 80% white. Let's call it what it is.
The industry is 80% white, and so a couple things. One, when we started hiring, we wanted people with print experience. And preferably daily print experience, which can include things like the MBJ, which is technically a weekly, but the Memphis Business Journal is constantly, they're updating all day. So that took a whole lot of people out. People who are maybe great feature writers from magazines, people who are great, doing sort of maybe TV news reporting. A whole lot of people, white, black, gay, straight, male, female, got taken out. We also made the decision that we wanted people who'd been covering Memphis, that had as much experience in Memphis as possible, because we are being ambitious. Back to what we were talking about in the other segment. We want to dominate, across all categories of news. And so that meant people had to be able to start and have connections and know neighborhoods and know people and know the difference between the city mayor and the county mayor and on and on and on. So then that pool got smaller because that meant we decided we weren't going to hire from outside in that first round.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. So I guess the term cub reporter is gone now, right? Because that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, because I could see where there's several of those reporters, and I mean, stacking them up against some of the old heads you've got from the CA. I can understand if you got 40 at the CA, but apparently the CA didn't make it. I mean, I'm just being real. I mean, it didn't make it. It's not making it now.
But how does that deal with the diversity?
But no, I'm going. If you'll let me go.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you
let me go because simply said those cub reporters. You don't. I mean, the diversity is there.
Right.
In terms of there may be some black Hispanic reporters who may not have that 30-year experience. You said you were looking for the diversity in the experience.
And I think we will be able to get there. I mean, we'll be able to get there in terms of now that we have this foundation of experience. The future reporters we hire could be out of market. They could have less experience. They could have really strong writing skills, but have never done it on a daily basis, and we can work with them. So that was very much the plan. Again, across anybody's background, that we would build this very highly experienced foundation. The other thing that happened in terms of percentages, a number of people turned us down. And when you're talking about a pool of print journalists, African-American print journalists, that's tiny, that met the criteria I just talked about. When a number of them turned us down, that swayed the numbers a lot. Now, would we have been at 60%?
I know of one person that turned you down. I know of probably 5 or 6 that never got approached, and maybe 4 or 5 more who did not know about it until it was announcement. So I think about this a lot because I started a news project where more than half of our contributors were black, and more than half were women. And so I know that it takes a lot more work to do that. I've worked in 4 daily newsrooms. Was at one time the fill-in city editor for the Commercial Appeal. So for my whole tenure there was assistant managing editor. So I know what it's like to run a newsroom and to try to hire for these positions. And I won't say it's easy. I would never say it's easy. But what I would say is that when you set certain parameters and limitations about what you're gonna accept, then you're already artificially narrowing the field. So you say that you didn't want. Maybe there's some people who were feature writers who might have gotten.
I should have said magazine
writers.
Yeah,
that's an artificial constraint, right? That's an artificial.
No, it's a business constraint.
Okay, so you wanted people who had been. You say you weren't necessarily looking for people who had TV skills, but I think in this video-centric market, to not want to bring in people who maybe had more of those broadcast skills seems a little short-sighted when we see what's happening with print or even just written.
I'm a big believer in the printed word. We will have video. I do the, I'm on the show. I understand the impact of TV, even a little niche, show on WKNO. But no, we were not in a position where we could take broadcast journalists and train them and give them the time to become print journalists. As in printed word journalists.
Right. So I don't think that it necessarily takes that much time, but the thing is you won't have to find out.
I do. And that's a difference.
Because you chose not to do that, right? And so if you said...
No, I've been in publishing, Wendi, I've been in publishing for 30 years.
So I
didn't choose. I mean, I'm not making this up. I mean, I've been around printed journalism, magazine, newspaper, community papers, all kinds of papers for 30 years.
Right. So I haven't been in 30 years. I've been only in journalism for 25 years. I've worked in the Indianapolis Star. I was
I'm
city
not challenging
editor. Just one second, if you don't mind. So I was at the Indianapolis Star, I was at the Nashville Tennessean, I was at the Charlotte Observer, and I was AME at Memphis. There's been, let me think. There have been 3 Memphis journalists in the history of the Neiman Foundation who have done that fellowship, prestigious fellowship at Harvard. Yeah. I'm the only woman and the only black person. I know now that you're familiar with the Memphis Association of Black Journalists, but after I learned, saw who the people were that y'all hired and noticed that so few were black, I asked the head of the Memphis Association of Black Journalists if y'all talked to him, and he did not. Y'all had not reached out to them. So I guess I say that to say that there are simple, basic, free things you could do, even after you set these parameters that I define as artificial, based on 25 years in 4 different markets, and you've been here, I think maybe in 1 other market. There are things you could have done that you didn't do. And what I'm trying to stress is those were choices. So tell me about why you chose not to contact anybody with the local Association of Black Journalists before you hired.
We didn't contact any associations.
So you relied on people that you knew?
We relied on, journalism is funny in that you can read everybody's stuff. Okay, and you can see everybody's work. It's a very public, by definition, it's a very public endeavor. And then we talked to a whole lot of people from the Commercial Appeal, past, present, and other publications in town. The thing I did wrong and I will, and Monty Lopez is the head of the Black Journalists Association.
Yeah, I think I connected you all on Twitter.
Yes, and we had lunch and we talked, and I'm going to speak to the membership this Saturday. I'm pretty sure it's this Saturday.
It's next Saturday, it's 13th, I believe.
Is it next Saturday?
Yeah.
Next Saturday, the 13th.
Okay, and so the mistake I made, which is fully on me, is I didn't advertise the positions. I don't think having advertised the positions, we would have made any changes in who we hired. But it created an impression that it was this club and that people were excluded.
Sure.
That was a mistake on me.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network.
So how do we fix it?
Yeah.
Well, going forward, everything will be very, very public. Everything will be advertised. I'm reaching out to, I'm sitting here with you all, but I'm reaching out to the Black Journalists Association. I'll reach out to other associations. We'll look out of market for hiring. And we, again, because we have this foundation of experienced local journalists, I can bring people in who are younger, who are out of market because they see the city in a whole different eye, and then we can build a more diverse newsroom.
Well, because it sounds to me like, when we talk, you're doing this new thing, the new way, and raising the level of consciousness a new way. Right. So if you're going to do the new thing the new way,
with a whole bunch of old people from the paper,
why do it with the playbook from before and say because
I didn't hire the business people.
Yeah, because the playbook's always like we want to hire people, but people aren't available, people aren't qualified. But there are a lot of qualified people. They just never get the opportunity to show how qualified they are. So you guys are real.
Right.
We know you guys are right.
Right.
But if you want to be funky, if you really want to be funky, you got to get off that. You got to get off of that. Not like that, DC. Don't you ever do that again on the show. But you really got to get off that. Get out of that rubric because that's one we've heard a lot. So I'm hoping that in this next round or whatever round, you're really going to be, intentional about going out and getting a diverse newsroom. Not just saying I want to get this, but really saying this is what we're looking for because the majority of your constituency is African American.
Right, and also
let me respond to a couple. Let me respond to a couple things he said. Now let me respond to a couple of things.
No, let me go ahead.
One is I kind of said it, but in the cross-check it might have come through. We are hiring these people with experience from the old model, and the old model failed. But journalism didn't fail. The business model of newspapers failed. The classifieds, the display advertising, the distribution, the decision by Metro papers, which were paid papers in print, very expensive in many cases, to go free online. They made a series of terrible business decisions. But if you watch national news and you read, anything that's going on with the president right now, print journalism has shown its value in terms of exposing potential corruption.
Absolutely.
So in hiring experienced journalists, they didn't fail. The people who ran the business failed. Now, on the second part of what you're saying, it was doing it the old way. And I do think that's where, not advertising, I made a mistake because I created this impression of an exclusive club. But I still am up against the reality that the pool of journalists is disproportionately white, and that's a problem. So I can be more intentional going forward. I absolutely agree with that term. We're very intentional about women, and we almost hit our target of being about 50% women. We didn't, but we almost got there. And the pool of female journalists is much bigger than, I'm getting my math wrong, but bigger than the pool of African American journalists.
We'll hold you to that.
And we're going to,
please do.
We won't just hold you to it. We'll give you folks.
Absolutely.
He's going to sign this in blood right here.
I have no problem with that. I'm sorry. No, Wendi, you were going to ask me something else.
Yeah, so I was curious, and this is something that, to be fair, Eric did not create. He did not create systems and that disenfranchise and marginalize Black people. You didn't do that.
Sure.
But you're maintaining it, and here's why. There were things you could have done that you didn't do, and you're acknowledging today, which is great. But you also seem to turn to the CA as your primary source, and the Commercial Appeal, and I was there for 11 years, has a horrible track record with people of color. So you're already going to a pool that's been artificially short. And I was very disappointed to hear that Louis Graham, who was the editor of Commercial Appeal when I was there, is playing some role, any role in your hiring, because you probably couldn't find 3 black journalists would go on the record and say that he was fair and did a great job of promoting and hiring Black people. And so again, I'm curious as to how you chose that.
Louis doesn't have any formal role. I mean, I've talked to Louis, absolutely, but Louis does not have a formal role. He's not on our board.
But you talked to him.
I did. I talked to Otis Sanford. I talked to
Monty
Jones.
Lopez.
I didn't talk to Monty. That's true. He's a broadcast journalist.
And he's the president of the Memphis Association of Black Journalists.
I understand that, but he's also he's a broadcast journalist.
So you weren't interested in tapping into his networks because you thought that maybe they wouldn't be as deep because he's a broadcast journalist?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
You just didn't do it.
It's not that I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
I think we know who the pool of print African American journalists are in Memphis who are working and there just aren't very many. And again, that isn't the system I created, and it's not a system I approve of, but there aren't very many. And when a couple of them turned us down, the numbers swayed.
So can I ask a question to both of you all? Can I ask a question to both of you all?
No, I said a couple.
Because I hear this a lot about there not being people in the pool. And that just shows us, that's just demonstrative.
It's not true.
It's demonstrative of how segregation has wrecked this city of professionals, where everyone in every profession is saying, we want to hire more, but they're not enough. They say that about bankers, lawyers, insurance people, real estate brokers, everything else. So I'm going to ask this question. How do we stock this pool? Because you got a brand new newspaper.
With a lot of money,
do something with a lot of money behind it. And you want to do something different.
Right.
You want to, and you're gonna do something different. I want you to do something different because I want you to hire some folks that look like us to talk about our news. Because I don't think anybody talks about Smoky City better than people who live there. I can go on and on and on. But how do we build the pool up today so that when you're in year 2, 3, you're not saying there's not a pool there? How do we do that? And I'm asking both of you all. Do we need to go to Lemoyne? Do we need to go to University of Memphis?
We'll go to all the colleges. U of M has the only official, I'm 90% sure it's the only official bachelor level journalism degree, but there are kids interested in journalism at Lemoyne and at Rhodes and at CBU, and we will go to all of them. We will start a meaningful internship program.
Or Southwest or
and the community colleges. Yeah, a meaningful internship program and bringing kids in and work. And I say kids because I'm old now, but
that's okay.
Young professionals coming in, and we will absolutely be intentional about people of color and women. We're working with Otis Sanford on that, and he will absolutely recommend everybody he can to us, and hopefully those interns turn into a job. I was an intern; it turned into a job. I think I don't know if Wendi was. So many back in the day, so many print journalists started as internship. It was a normal pipeline. It was a part of the system that actually worked. We will be intentional with those interns being people of color, and I'm hiring.
Wendi, you want to go? You want to have a word on that, and then we'll go to break.
I mean, I just think that I think why this bothers me is because I'm disappointed. It was an opportunity, and I disagree that the pool is that small, and you don't know if you don't ask, right? And so if you don't advertise, you don't know who's out there, and you can't say, well, we knew what the pool was, because you don't. And you would never accept that from a source that you were interviewing from a story. You would ask them, well, how do you know the pool is small? Who did you ask? Who did you talk to? Who did you check? And when they told you we didn't ask anybody, we forgot to ask.
That's not true. That's
or we did not ask people.
Or
we didn't ask
many people.
Yeah.
Many.
Or we didn't ask people that would be obvious to ask. I mean, frankly, Eric, you never even asked me. I ran a news project where more than half of the people were people of color, and you never said, hey, Wendi, who should I be looking at? Who should I be talking to? Again, I mean, of the print journalists in Memphis, black print journalists in Memphis?
Wow.
You never even asked me.
Wait, what is it we always say? Swinging door and telephone. We got to communicate. We got to educate. We got to grow this thing. Wow. Like we try to do here every time. Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network.
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the Kazukian Network.
Artivism, Funky Politics, R&R on Sports, Neighborhood Connect, Blues in the Basement, Riffin' on Jazz. Your three black chicks, best in blue. Kazukian, Kudziukian.
Kazukian! Politics is what we do. We just make it funky.
Funky fresh with my body so melodic. This beat rolls right through my chest. Everybody, Martin, Poppy came to party. Grab somebody.
We're back with you with Funky Politics here on the Kazukian Network. Myself, Doc Ward, and our special guest host, Wendi Thomas, sitting along here with our special guest, Eric Barnes, who happens to be the president and executive editor of the Daily Memphian.
There you go.
And I tell you, this show couldn't be any funkier.
Funkier than a pack of skunks in your trunk.
I'm smelling old collard greens right now that he had sitting in the refrigerator and I threw outside.
It's not the skunk that's funky. It's just that little gland.
Oh, my God.
Good Lord. It's the gland.
But
we're not calling you a funky skunk, though. Either one of you two.
I wasn't sure where that was going.
We want to jump right back into where we left off. Now, this show is on fire, folks. This show is on fire.
It is.
Oh God, it's on fire. I'm sweating over here.
We're talking about skunks.
Yeah, we're talking about
diversity.
Yeah,
black and white skunks diverse.
Whatever.
But the funk is the same.
That's a horrible transition. Horrible transition.
We don't even want to. But Wendi,
it's a funky transition.
I want Wendi to come out. Wendi, we were talking a little bit off here about this donor piece with the Daily Memphian, and you see some. I'll let you frame that because I'm going to put some on it.
Yeah, so again, I haven't been doing startup journalism my whole life, but it has been my focus for the last 3 years. And so when I heard that the Daily Memphian had made the choice to not reveal who their donors were, I was surprised because that is in direct contradiction of the guidelines, ethics, practices, and policies from the Institute for Nonprofit News, which is one of the organizations that you said that y'all consulted. They have donor transparency guidelines, and I'm guessing the Daily Memphian will not be part of this organization because you have to agree to these guidelines to be a part of this organization. And
yeah, they made that clear to us. They're very supportive, but they said, well, you can't be a member, but
because you're not going to follow the guidelines. One of which says, as a nonprofit, we will avoid accepting donations from anonymous sources, and we will not accept donations from government entities, political parties, elected officials, or candidates actively seeking public office. But you've decided that you all are going to keep your donors anonymous. And just for the record, you can go to MLK50.com and look at our donor list. We have everyone who's given more than $5,000 listed there per their guidelines, although we are also not a part of this group. But to be ethical, we did want to follow their guidelines. So tell me more about your decision, or maybe it's Andy's decision, the organization's decision to not do this.
And Andy Case being the board chair and I essentially partner in this. All the money was donated anonymously. And passed through the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis and is controlled by the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees is public, and I don't think it's on the website at this moment, but I can tell you who all the members are. They are in charge of the money. The money sits in a bank account, and the money was donated, no strings attached. And so the donors have absolutely no say or control over what we do. Without that, I would not have been comfortable. I would have never done this if it was sort of anonymous donors who are basically doling out money as we do a good job or don't. All the money had to come through, and the near $7 million, and all of it had to be no strings attached, and all of it had to be controlled by a public, transparent board. That was.
But they're not transparent because we don't know who the donors are.
The board is transparent.
So, do you know? Can you confirm that that none of your board members or the organizations get money from Andy Cates or his
the
foundation?
Board members,
their organization. So that would be.
We're talking about the board now.
Right. So the board. So New Memphis, Soulsville, Epicenter, none of them get money from Andy Cates.
I don't know.
Okay, fair answer.
That would be something that you would want to know, right? Because otherwise, how would...
No, I mean, I've been on boards a lot. I mean, there's, you've got governance of the boards. The board is not allowed to, influence editorial control, editorial content. I mean, I have full independence of what we publish. What their dealings with one another, I mean, that's pretty typical of a board. I mean, boards all over Memphis. I'm just not sure where you're going with that.
Right. So I guess my concern would be if the board is, part of their job is to hold you accountable, right? Because I guess
absolutely.
Right.
Yes, I work for the board.
So how likely would, let's just pick out Rashawn. How likely would Rashawn be to push back if she is also aware that Andy Cates is giving her organization money? Because
you'd have to ask Rashawn.
Well, that would be something that you could mitigate for if that was...
But how does that trickle down to the news product, though? That's what I want to know.
So I think the reason that the Institute of Nonprofit News has these guidelines is to try to avoid these conflicts of interest. Now, in a city like Memphis, it's a big, small town, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to have... There's no way to be completely isolated from everybody that's doing anything.
Completely, that's right.
No, not in those places. You got 20% of the people doing 80% of stuff.
But why you want to be transparent is so that the reader can say, okay, have they gone out of their way to be non-biased in this coverage? Are they making sure to include all viewpoints? Or if you see a story and you're like, they're not including all viewpoints, this is clearly slanted, you can say, well, they don't get money from this group, so probably that's not an influence. But if they are getting money from whomever, and all the stories about FedEx are positive,
but the donors can't, the newsroom doesn't know who the donors are, so how could they slant our coverage?
So if I think that most of my money is coming from y'all, from the Gazookian Network, then am I going to be as critical of y'all or investigate tips into y'all if I think that investigating the network will cut off one of my big donors.
Right. I mean, okay, so then basically we shouldn't write anything because anyone could be a donor.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network.
I guess we're trying to get out of a situation like I think there are donors. People always claim that was it George Soros owns all the papers and does XYZ.
Yeah.
The Koch brothers own XYZ and they slant the news. And I think everybody kind of understands that if you have money and power, you can influence not necessarily the news of the story, but the manner in which it is depicted.
Sure.
And that always influences the minds of the people that read it. So I guess what we're trying to figure out is, are there clear lines between donation and the product, so that the people that are producing the product don't get caught up in who's giving to a point to where it affects the
money
news.
cannot be the money is is in the bank account of Memphis Fourth Estate, the nonprofit that controls the Daily Memphian. The money cannot be taken back by the donors. The money, it's gone, and it's no strings attached. So it's the board is the holder of the money, and I execute the product, the people under me and so on, is the structure. And the board has signed pledges that they won't influence coverage to their benefit, and it's a transparent board. I mean, we are, IRS, we will be, IRS regulator, however you say that. And I mean, everything's going to be transparent between the board and then you end up judging. I mean, I don't really fight Wendi as much as it might sound on this. My point would be, because all news organizations have boards, or they have donors, or if they're for-profit, they have owners, they have investors, and you've got that issue. You've got this issue of a board of some sort, be it donor or not, be it for-profit or not. Does it have influence over its coverage? Well, you look at a Rupert Murdoch and his newspapers, he explicitly has coverage. I mean, he's at the high end of that. The New York Times, do they? They have probably more control, more separation, but you can't help but see that there's some influence between ownership and what the news is doing. Local TV news, the whole Sinclair Broadcasting fiasco, which, Sinclair would have loved that not to come out, that they were dictating news to the newsrooms, and thankfully it broke, and it did. I think in the end you have to judge us on the coverage we do, and are we shying away from something?
And do you all spark debate?
And do we spark debate? But are we not covering something or someone or some organization? And is that sort of, we got to be judged in the end on what we do, regardless of the promises or policies we put in place.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. Speaking of being judged, I know there's something that we can all agree with at this table, right? That there is an onslaught, there is a war, I believe, that's being waged in our print media, and it's out there. It's out there in the journalistic world, where you have a sitting president, and I don't want to just give it one person, but you've got an administration that really has just said that, all media, so to speak, is bad. I mean, unless he says it's good, it's bad.
Yeah.
Where we get? I know you two. We can agree on something. I think we can agree
on a number of things, but this one, 100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's really dangerous because, the good journalism is really, can be the last standard against a failing democracy. A democracy feels like it's disintegrating, and so
the last bastion of real truth and honesty.
I would like to think so. Okay. And to that end, anything that any journalists are going to do in Memphis, to that end, I hope succeeds and is successful. It would be great if it was done with people who looked like Memphis.
Sure.
But in the interim, while we're working to get to that point,
you listen to the Kazuki Network, and all of its products, especially Funky Politics.
We want a strong media.
You want a strong media.
We want a strong media.
There you go.
Eric?
What she said. I mean, I agree completely. I think it's an abomination, the things he's saying and the attacks on the press, and it is very authoritarian to try to undermine the press and try to create an alternate reality when you're facts are facts, but when you are systematically trying to destroy the credibility of the gatekeepers and the honest brokers, that's authoritarianism, and it's very dangerous.
Well, with that, you're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. We have had a wonderful time here. Doc, myself, our special guest host today, Wendi. Have you had fun today, Wendi?
I've had a great time. I always have a good time.
You've had a phenomenal time.
Oh, I keep leaving that word out.
Yeah.
She's had a funky time today.
It's his word.
That's his word. Eric Barnes, president and executive editor of the Daily Memphian, which is a new kid on the block here. joining all of us as we try
Thank you
to
for
put
having
out
me.
the good word.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the conversation.
He's had a fantastic time.
I have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're gonna call
Anytime.
you. We're gonna call you the Funkmeister. Is that good, Funkmeister?
Somebody else has got that name. We'll give him one.
We'll give him. Okay.
We'll give him
That
one.
might be a stretch.
We'll give
Quite
one.
honestly, that might be a stretch.
Yeah.
My kids would not let that
When he
go.
comes
Yeah.
back to talk about all of this great diversity and stuff that the Daily Memphian,
Fair
we're
enough.
going to give him his name then. You get your name first.
You will get a name.
There you go.
Anyway,
there you go.
We're glad to have had you guys. Hey, look, we've had a lot of fun today. That's why you need to always stay tuned to Funky Politics right here on the Kazukian Network.
DC and Doc Ward on Funky Politics.
It's iConversation.
Elliot Perry, otherwise known as Socks.
Man, thank you. How you guys doing?
Mr. Earl the Pearl Monroe.
Hey, thank you. Nice to be with you guys.
Glad to have Mr. Allen Houston.
Trying to stay warm up here in New York.
I hear you. Personality extraordinaire, Mr. Scoop Jackson.
I appreciate the encore.
Mr. Michael Ray Richardson.
What's up, man? Glad to be here, brother.
A 3-time NBA All-Star, the one, the only Detlef Shrimp.
Howard and Larry, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
iConversation. The Kazukian Network.
DC and Doc Ward on Funky Politics.
Powered by Memphis Light Gas and Water.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukian Network. DC, man, we mixed it up today.
Ooh, I still.
Well, we ain't mixed it up. The Funk Nominal Woman and Eric mixed it up.
Funkmeister. Well, we're not going to.
We're gonna hold that name. Remember, we said we're gonna hold that name.
Hold it.
We're gonna hold that name.
Hold it.
Sorry, don't you give me a bad visual. We're gonna hold that name until we come back and we see that diversity and inclusion, because I mean, that's what we're all about.
He said it on the show here today that a Daily Memphian will eventually be diverse. Now, it's not diverse now to any
but eventually he
major respect, right?
But with all deliberate speed, eventually. That's what we're talking about, because it has to be done. It has to be done. Not only because it's just a good thing to do, because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
There's never the wrong time to do the right thing. And in this city, Memphis, Tennessee, 60% black.
63. Go ahead.
63% black. We have got to get out of the notion that there are no black people around to do the various jobs and trades and skills and other things that make up the great economy for this great city. So we thank the Funk Nominal Woman for bringing that all out. I thank you for hanging here with me, and we thank Eric for hosting and telling us the truth. In the meantime,
yes, sir,
we invite, implore, and demand you to always think diverse, but to always keep it real,
keep it right,
and keep it funky.
Right here on the Kazukian Network, always listening to Funky Politics.
Funky Politics, recorded at Kazukian Studio, directed, produced, recorded, and distributed by Kazukian.